Hello, I'm Lamisile Pamela Ngubane, and this is the Entity Dynamics podcast. Entity Dynamics is a culture development consultancy where we believe that culture creates behavior and behavior creates reality. The title of this video is The Horror Behind Horror Stories. Okay, so it's a little bit of a heavy topic, but it's a topic that I think is important because, people watch horror stories. I don't. I don't like being scared unnecessarily. I don't like being scared, period, actually. So I don't watch them. But I have watched them in the past, growing up and everything. And I was thinking to myself the other day, because I had like a spiritual encounter, if you will. And I've had these before, you know, where one sees things that are not of this dimension. So I realized that there's a lot going on um, in other dimensions, obviously. And I've spoken about this before, but I think there's a lot going on that we don't know about. There's a lot that's going on that we have mischaracterized. And there's a lot that we have deliberately distorted or we've inherited distorted versions of these things. And I think it's unfair on these beings from the other realm that we have these distortions and that we persist with these distortions, And I think that this is one of the reasons why we have horror stories. There's other reasons, and I want to touch on them. And I'm not going to make this like a series one after the other. I think I'm going to like break it up into various time frames like of recording because like I said, it is a heavy topic and I don't want to like rush it. So we live in a world where we as humans can only perceive a very small percentage of what's actually in existence. We can only see apparently only 4% of what is in existence, just because of the frequencies of light that our eyes are able to process through our brains. We can also only hear a very small percentage of things. And I suspect we can only also smell a small percentage of things and feel, with our touch sense, and probably even taste very limited amounts of things, right? So I think that one of the reasons why we have these horror stories is because there is the horror of disinformation and the horror of believing that ignorance is bliss and so choosing ignorance over knowledge, right? For me, when people talk about light and dark, I don't see it as light and dark. I see it as truth and ignorance. Not to say that the darkness is ignorance and that the light is truth, but what I think people are actually trying to mean, what the meaning they're trying to actually convey, is that there's a battle between truth and ignorance, not a battle between light and dark, because the light and the dark actually work together to make life possible. I mean, we sleep at night and we need darkness to get proper rest. And, in the womb, it's dark. I don't know if the fetus would develop properly if it was like there was a bright light in there. It seems like it is in the darkness that one is able to develop consciousness and identity and experience transformation and metamorphosis like the butterfly, right? So that on its own is just another illustration of these distortions that we refuse to interrogate and that we just carry on running with. I read somewhere one time that if you had spoken to a Native American in 1491, the year before Columbus arrived, and you asked them whether or not they're afraid of walking in the forest at night, they would have said, no, what am I to be afraid of? The trees are my brothers and sisters, and, the grass and the animals that live there, they're all my family. Why should I be afraid of my family? Then come the Westerners with their Christian nationalism, essentially, because that's what Emperor Constantine created. And they were afraid of the dark, and they were afraid of the forest, because in the forest were evil spirits, right? And it's like, based on what are the evil spirits in the forest? It's completely based on perception, subjective perception, right? So how do we impose subjective perception on a whole other world, realm, dimension of beings, just based on prejudice and fear, manufactured fear based on disinformation, you know? So this is where a lot of these horror stories come from. Distorted perception of beings from other dimensions. So I think it's a very negative thing, and it's illustrated in the story of the mother goddess Bertha or Berchta from Germany. She is, the mother goddess of the region. But the Christian nationalists from the Vatican, and I suppose later the Protestants, the Lutherans, have reduced her to this ugly, old, shriveled up witch creature that they dress up as in their parades, some sort of church parade, obviously. So the church demonized her in order to take people away from honoring her and revering her and learning from her and participating, cooperating with her in the manufacturing of their lives, right? She is, in her original form, very beautiful and majestic naturally. But then in the Christian depiction, she's all old and bent over with like a big nose and warts and the normal parody you see of a witch, And it's like, and I said this a while ago when I was talking about Halloween, and I had listened to a reading from Anne, the Black Wind psychic, the lady I spoke about before. And she was talking about how people don't know what they're doing when they come to do what they do on Halloween. And it connected dots for me that I had, like, things I'd been thinking about, and I had like been wondering about. And she connected dots for me. And I came to this conclusion, that like this understanding that people are parodying beings from other dimensions that they know nothing about. And I said, would you like it if you were being parodied like that? So then when spirits show themselves and scare people, and then they make horror movies about them, you've been parodying these beings. What do you want from them? Are they supposed to just take it and accept that they're going to be disrespected routinely by you based on your ignorance, your willful ignorance, your maintained distorted perception of them? So this is one of the aspects of the horror behind horror stories. And our conscience has been so seared in this world. We are so hardened to seeing things from other perspectives. We are so quick to dismiss the idea that we need to have respect for all life, all creation, and assume this superiority to all other living beings, whether we can perceive them with our five senses or not. That's horrific. We need to start to become mature and sensitive people and understand that we are not alone here, and we must behave with respect. You can't just be going around parodying powerful goddesses and think everything is just going to carry on being hunky-dory for you. It's not like that. And then we make horror stories about the after effects of our ignorance.